Pretty Little Liars, the TV show, sometimes deals with disturbing and problematic topics. We provided a list of content warnings in the episode description.
Hello and welcome to Dead Ends. I'm Emily.
I'm Brenton.
And we have 2 new episodes from season 2.
We do.
Pretty Little Liars for you.
Mm-hmm.
Episodes 7 and 8.
I've been writing the full episodes numbers, so 29 and 30.
Oh.
So I'd say 7 and 8 probably.
Uh-huh.
Because we've been doing 2, and
Yep.
7 and 8.
I write down season 2, episode 7.
Yeah.
Season 2, episode 8.
These episodes have everything. Disguises, fighting over which boy you want, B&E. It's everything.
Uh-huh. We can get into it later, but we'll have to find out what your favorite plot point is from these episodes.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we can just dive right in if that sounds good to you.
It does sound good to me.
Episode 29, Surface Tension. All the friends are gathered at Hannah's and they're talking about Emily staying there. Spencer asks if, and Hannah says it's going to be like a sleepover every night because the guest room there's like pipes burst in the wall or something. So they're like working on it. And so Emily is like, yeah, how exciting. Spencer asks if Garrett has called Emily about Logan Reed. Spencer mentions how, if they could track him down and get that money back, she could really use the money for Melissa's ring. And they all commiserate about how they're worried about A going silent for the moment. Hannah goes to answer the door, and the other 3 discuss A's motivation and how, it's about just keeping them alive to mess with them, and that A may have killed Allie. Hannah comes back with a gift basket with a card from A that says, "What fun! 2 little liars under one roof. You're making it so easy." Hannah is disgusted by the candy choice and throws it away. Aria looks through dresses from her closet and talks to her mom about having a little get together at their house, and this will be the first time they've had a dinner party since Ella's been back. Mike characteristically goes to leave, and Ella tries to stop him, but he just keeps moving on. Aria reassures him that she sees him at school at least.
He eats at school because he didn't eat breakfast.
Oh. I thought you said I see him at school.
I see him eat at school.
Well, eat at school. All right, perfect. Byron walks by and Ella stops him to see if Mike knows to come to the party tonight and discuss who on their guest list is coming. Byron says, yes, Mike does know. He should know we want him there. But only one family is able to come. He then says he was thinking of inviting Mr. Fitz and wouldn't that be nice? He could bring a date. And Aria looks extremely flustered as her parents discuss this. Emily makes omelets for the Marins and a full course breakfast. Ashley and Hannah are very pleased by this, and Emily's like, "It is my pleasure and way of saying thank you for letting me stay here." Emily, truly, we have no idea what denomination she is, but truly the most Catholic character on this. I owe you a debt for taking me in.
And I should start paying it now.
Uh-huh. Emily rubs her neck awkwardly, awkwardly, like it's tender, and both the Marins ask if she's okay, and Emily's like, "It's okay, I'm just sore from my new workout." Emily mentions that she talked to her mom on the phone after her run, which Emily, this one to my left, my fiance, then replied, "God, she does so much in the morning."
This girl had a whole life.
Mm-hmm.
She was like, yeah, I went on a run, I got ready, and then I made you all breakfast, and I talked to my mom on the phone.
Yeah, completely.
What time do you think she got up? 5?
Yeah, probably.
Not for me.
Couldn't be.
Nope.
She is definitely the morning runner person of she's definitely the that morning runner person that you'd see run by and you're like, "Oh my God."
Yeah, when you're sitting outside and you're hungover and you see someone run by in college and you're like, "What the hell?"
100%. Okay, so Spencer and Mr. Hastings, aka Peter, now that we know his name.
Now that you know his name.
Discuss Toby helping out at their house for with some construction things. Spencer says, he can handle the job as long as you make sure that Toby gets the job to build the nursery extension. Spencer mentions that Toby can do it before the fence even gets built. Peter says, "Oh no, I put a stop to the fence that Jason was building because it came into on our property." Peter's like, that family is nothing if not consistent. They're always crossing the line.
To which Brenton celebrated.
Yeah, I was like very excited for a moment, but then it didn't. I was really hoping that this would get into like
a turf war.
Yeah, like the type of thing where it's the main plot line about it is that there's this weirdness with like property lines and things like that, and then you find out that there's something hidden on the property. You know what I mean? Like,
what if I told you we're skipping straight
to the exactly? Yeah, which I like that other stuff because it gives you that like flavor of like
rich people.
Yeah, and then like the obviously them finding like the murder weapon or whatever is like the rot underneath like them like demoing and like bulldozing over like houses or like all their rich people shit.
Suspicious.
Yeah, exactly, but we don't get that.
If Brenton wrote the show.
Arya and Fitz discuss the dinner party. Arya says he definitely has to cancel. He can't come. Fitz says, I've already accepted. And then Fitz starts to go, maybe it's a good idea for me to come. And you know what? It is actually your idea. Because we need to figure out how to like be able to like coexist or like around your parents, and like your parents like will able to like kind of see us like in a different light, and like they need to figure out, we need to figure out how to get them to see us as a couple, and that in an adult atmosphere it might kind of help seeing them across from each other.
Gaslight, gatekeep, Ezra.
100%. He's in full on mode with this argument. Arya eventually kind of finds this either compelling or just acquiesces, and they agree it's a good baby step. Hannah and Emily walk to school. Hannah jokes with Emily about her making breakfast at the house, and Emily's like, I just want to be a good guest. I I can totally make breakfast for you guys. And Hannah's like, you need to relax. Like, no, like, you don't need to worry. Are you always like this before meet? Emily's like, no. And Hannah's like, we need to figure out how to get you to react.
We gotta get you to a spa.
They see Caleb arguing with a guy, and Hannah walks over. Caleb's like, this guy like fucked me over. I mean, he doesn't say it in those terms, but they don't say fuck in the show. And it's like, he didn't pay me after updating his phone.
I like this version better. That guy fucked me over.
It's like, this guy didn't pay after I after this phone. Hannah's like, well, maybe you should like go legit, pretty much. And Caleb bristles as that. Hannah asks, aren't you still getting like foster money from whatever his foster's mom name is?
Yeah.
And Caleb says, yes, but I need more money for my business to get it off the ground. And he tells her he doesn't need her to fight all his battles for him. They go inside, and the camera pans to a car across the street. Byron enters Mike's room. Let's take a quick pause here. Wild decor in Mike's room, and then so he has but mainly like what's on his wall, it's like normal teenage stuff, but he has a detached like car like side mirror on his desk. Just like as like a little thing. It's like, it looks like a silver off a car. And so what they decide to do in this scene with like multiple mirrors is to like try and get tricky with the cinematography, where it's like really distracting, where it's like always capturing Mike in reflections, because he's like, his true intentions of being like a bad child, pretty much.
He doesn't want to look at his parents, I think, is part of it too.
Yeah, but it's also that too. And then he's also like kind of got this like mischievous like idea every time he like is like evading questions and like talking to his dad. Like, I don't want to talk to you.
But the best part of the rearview mirror is that instead of objects in the mirror being closer than they appear, they've covered up objects with parents. Yeah.
It's just... Oh my God, it was so goofy. I was just like, oh my God, because normally this show's pretty like static with its shots. It's just kind of like shot, reverse shot, shot, reverse shot. But then it's just like, ooh, we're going to use this weird decor mirror. I couldn't figure it out.
The Montgomery children are eclectic, and they get to do things their own way. That's why he's got one of those wave boards.
Yeah. Mike is certainly surfing his own wave.
He was the peak of 2011, 2012. Like, those were everywhere.
2012. Yeah. Yeah. I'm horrible at writing those things. But weirdest, I don't understand the mirror thing, but it is hilarious. So Byron tries to talk to Mike about the dinner party tomorrow. Like, you're gonna come, right? Mike's like, well, I'm busy, and Byron yells at him to make himself unbusy. And it's important because this is the first party since your mother's been back in the house. Mike's like, okay. Byron walks away, and then that's when we get a shot of a mirror as it slowly focuses on the tagline at the bottom. Toby is once again working hard, always working construction. Spencer then teases him and offers to make him lunch. Peter then suddenly rounds the corner and asks, hey, weren't you supposed to start tomorrow? And Toby's like, yeah, I just wanted to get a head start on it. And, I had some ideas for updating the barn. I'm not an architect, but here, take a look at these sketches. And shows him this beautiful, I'm not an architect, but what I can only assume is architectural quality book of here's these schematics, which is amazing. And Peter says wow, these are great. He's like, can I keep them? And Toby's like, yeah, of course. And Peter walks away. Spencer and Toby then embrace happily and kiss.
And Brenton goes, yay.
Yeah, but it's well, I was more worried. It's we're never going to see those plans again. Peter's going to get this built and without Toby's help. And Toby's going to be mad. Arya enters, or we just won't follow up on it. Arya enters. Those are the two options. Arya
previously on Pretty Little Liars. Dropped plot line.
Arya enters her mom's classroom, and Ella's like, hey, look who I ran into. And turns out it's Jason.
Because all adult men love to hang out in high schools.
God, they need a... Gotta keep him out. Jason says he's here to meet with the guidance counselor because he offered to meet with at-risk students at the school. Because he wished someone had intervened on him pretty much. Okay. Jason's like, hey, I have to go. But thank you so much, Ella, for sending the note to my mom. She really appreciated it. And Ella's like, well, good. I'm glad she received it. And Ella's like, oh, so, just make sure to bring yourself tomorrow. And Arya's like, wait, what? Ella's like, well, I invited Jason to dinner. And Jason's like, oh, yeah, well, I'll see you there, and leaves. Arya then does the worst job pretending to be okay with it. It's like, well, why would you invite him? Why would you? Why would you invite him?
I'm just a little confused.
Right.
It's when your boss doesn't like what you're doing but doesn't want to say it.
And does it? It has no way of going. It's but why?
It's very very lacking in feedback.
Yes. And then Ella goes on about how their family's been through a lot with a fashion show or everything, and just we want to be able to bring him in. And Arya's like, I told you we didn't do it. And Ella says, I believe you. But someone did, and if there's someone at the school terrorizing you and your friends, your father and I need to know. Arya says it was just a prank. Ella says, okay.
What about when my father terrorized me for years?
Yeah. Water under the bridge. We're never going to talk about that again. Ella says, okay, well, your father said Mr. Fitz can come to dinner, and how exciting is that? You better get used to calling him Ezra. I won't. Emily is trying to study while Hannah listens to music and sings. Emily throws a pillow at her to eventually get her to stop singing. And then Hannah's like, what? I wasn't making too much noise, pretty much. Emily rubs her neck again, and Hannah asks if she's okay. Emily's like, yes, totally fine. Emily says, hey, what was up with Haleb today? And Hannah says, oh, just business. Emily asks if he's still as one, does he still have a business? And Hannah says yes. Emily asks if she's okay with that, and Hannah declines to answer. And then Emily asks, I think it was she asked directly, what does Dr. Sullivan think about this? And Hannah just puts her earbuds in. We'll come back around on the Haleb business in these episodes. I'm not sold. At school, Arya asks how Emily's liking it at Hannah's, and Emily expresses frustration at living there, but she then couches it, of course, being well, I'm very lucky to be there. They're so nice for having me. And Arya's like, Spencer asks if Emily has talked to Garrett, and Emily says, no, I've been slammed with the new workout. Spencer's like, well, I could contact him. And Emily says, that's amazing. You should do that. You're so good at getting people to talk. Spencer then goes, I am. And both Emily and Arya are like, yes, you totally are. You're the best. Emily then leaves. Spencer then, self-conscious about this, tries to pawn it off on Arya, and Arya's like, no, I'm busy and I have that dinner party tonight. Spencer's like, oh my goodness, isn't it just gonna be the best? Fitz is gonna be there and it's just gonna go great. And Arya mentions that her mom invited Jason. Spencer's then aghast, like, why? Why is this man coming into your house? And Arya's like, well, my mom feels sorry for him, and maybe it'll be okay. Garrett and Spencer talk outside. They talk about how Logan Reed disappeared after Emily shook him down at his place of work. And Garrett followed up on all these leads, but he's just gone. Garrett says he'll keep an eye out for him. But Spencer, don't expect to find any surprises here, and all the loose ends are going to lead back to the same place. Spencer's then like, Ian? And Garrett's like, yes. Ella is at Ashley's house. Random. A two-parent scene? Asking if Hannah had said anything about what happened at the fashion show. They both agree that this seems really concerning, this weird, that big big quote-unquote prank. Ella says, I think this has been happening for a while and we're just noticing. Ashley agrees and says with all the things happening, mentions Allie's disappearance and murder, the bell tower, Ian, and she's like, it's easy to conjure up connections between all these things. Ashley asks who else Ella has spoken to, and Ella then kind of goes through, it's like, well, Pam's in Texas. And then Ashley's like, did you talk to the Hastings? And Ella just shakes her head no. Ashley's like, we rolled over way too fast on separating the girls, and I believe this is all Peter Hastings doing, and that he never met a problem he couldn't buy off. I, for one, love this scene. We get parents actually talking about
being good parents.
Yes, then the thing reacting to things happening in the show. People actually like talking about this from a different perspective. I love it, and we get new insight onto other parents and things. Great stuff. Happy to dig this in more into this later. Toby digs in the backyard. I read that sentence and I'm just imagining a golden retriever digging in a backyard. But no, this is a man. He finds a broken piece of wood.
Toby?
Exactly.
Drop it.
Drop it. God, he dug up my azaleas again. He finds a broken piece of wood that has a little sticker tag labeled Hastings. Peter then walks up and he's like, hey, what you got there? Toby hands it over to him and Peter's like, hey, where was this? Where did you find this? And Toby's like, right here on the property line. Peter's like, I'll take care of this. And Toby asks what it is and why someone would bury it. Peter's like, it's all right, Toby. I'll take care of it. Not reassuring, but that's not his intention. Montgomery dinner party is off to a decent start with the guests that are two new characters that are there, the one guest that could come, and unfortunately Mike is missing. Fitz then arrives with flowers. And Arya is very excited to see him and calls him Ezra very quietly. Fitz hands off scotch as a gift to Byron, to which Byron loves. The doorbell then rings again and Arya answers it to Jason, with flowers, which he hands directly to Arya, and Fitz looks over, jealous.
Well, it's so funny too because it's well, yeah, she opened the door.
Uh-huh.
If she had opened the door, would you have not have handed the flowers to her?
Right, totally. And I mean, even until the vibes are really off later, Fitz is way too skeptical out the gate.
He's a jealous man.
Yes, he is.
Why do you think that is? We'll dig into that.
Toby and Spencer. Come back later. Toby and Spencer talk about the piece of wood, which was a piece from a field hockey stick that was found in the yard. Toby says Peter might have been scared that he found it. Toby asks if it was Spencer's or Melissa's. Flashback. Spencer shows off a field hockey stick she uses to practice with Allie and mentions that it was Melissa's field hockey stick before then. Arya then asks when Allie became so interested in field hockey. Allie says she's just exploring her options. Arya asks if she's interested in someone who plays field hockey. Spencer's then like, boys don't play field hockey. And Allie is like, you don't have to play the game to be interested. Back to the present. Spencer talks to Arya about on the phone about Toby finding the stick. Arya asks if she's sure it's the same one, and Spencer's like, absolutely, it has to be. Fitz looks concerned as Arya walks off on her foot, to go talk on the phone. Arya asks how it got in their backyard. Spencer says, "You bury murdy weapons." Ugh.
You bury Murray weapons.
Murray. Spencer says you bury murder weapons. And it was at Allie's house the night she got killed. Arya then has a flashback. Jason walks into the backyard where they all were and calls Allie and says, "Hey, Mom wants you back home." They then argue back and forth, and Jason takes the stick from her like a mean older brother, motions like he's gonna hit her, and doesn't. Allie then grabs it back from him and goes to actually hit him, which he grabs in midair and says, "Too bad, Allie, you won't get another chance."
And I'm pretty sure if you go on YouTube, you can find an outtake of him smacking him in the head.
It's so good. I mean, she's swinging at him,
Yeah, and I mean, it's obviously not on purpose, but
it's good. Back in the present, Arya says Jason was in the house that summer. It's a funny revelation because he lives there. Spencer says so was Ian. Arya says that A may be playing with us again. Spencer says, but someone else found it this time. We wouldn't have found it if my dad hadn't stopped the fence from being built. Hannah is with Emily and says, "Hey, Emily, you don't need to study at the library. You don't need to go." And Emily's like, "Well, I need to study there because studying here is like studying at the mall." Hannah then says, "Oh, I study at the mall at the time." Emily says, "Well, I'm different." Hannah asks, "Is it a gay thing?" Caleb then arrives to break up this talk before Hannah buries herself even deeper, and Emily leaves. Caleb asks if Ashley's home, and Hannah says she's out to dinner with her dad, and then they both make out. Arya comes downstairs as Fitz and Byron talk about Fitz's time in Ireland. The boys, including Jason, all then talk about cycling in one way or another. Arya answers the door to cops who ask for her parents. The officer then explains that Mike had broken into a house. Arya looks at Jason, and Fitz notices this. Ella and Byron then leave with the officer to go to the station. Toby leaves for the night with his tools as Peter pulls up and stops him to talk. Peter says he thought it was hey, just about that thing earlier. I thought it was junk from the dealer Rentis' yard. Toby says what said Hastings on it. Peter says, "Yeah, but I don't want you to take it the wrong way, and hey, don't mention this to Spencer." Toby says, "Well, too late for that." And Peter's like, "Oh, you did?" And Toby's like, "Well, I didn't know. I shouldn't have." Peter then asks how she took it, and Toby says it didn't mean anything to her. Peter mentions that there's no reason to tell her about this conversation then, and Toby says, "No, sir." They then wish each other good night and go their separate ways. I love Toby because he's suspicious and completely unflappable in this exchange.
Uh-huh.
Good on Toby.
Yeah, and he's like, "Yeah, I'll just lie."
Mm-hmm. Where he's just kind of he's not lying. He's I want to see where this goes. Back at the Montgomery household, Arya's cleaning up and Fitz is helping out. Fitz asks about Jason and says he didn't know he was a friend of the family. Arya says Fitz is what about tell me more about this Jason guy. Arya's it's Allie's brother. Fitz is "Oh, well, I didn't know he was a friend of the family." And Allie's "Yeah, our moms are friends."
She was my best friend.
Arya walks over then to give Jason coffee and to talk to him about Mike. Arya says he promised me he wouldn't do this anymore. Jason's he probably meant it when he said it. And he reassures Arya saying, "Arya, you are not the reason Mike is doing this." And asks how many places Mike has broken into. Fitz watches them from afar. Byron, Ella, and Mike leave the station, and Byron confronts Mike "Hey, you have to talk about this. Why were you doing this?" Mike acts tough, and Ella stops Byron. It's "Hey, you need to calm down. How did we miss this?" Ella's "There must be something else going on." And Byron's "What could he possibly be walking around with, holding on to that would cause him to do this?" And Ella says, "I don't know, but maybe we should do a better job asking." Ella goes into Supermom over these couple episodes.
Ella's "Oh yeah, I am a parent."
Ella suddenly, Ella is responding in this situation, however ridiculous it is this is a wake up call. we've been in autopilot, and our son is doing serial B&Es.
Well, and I think it also because like they feel guilty about the whole like messing up with Arya and her friends thing. Like they gave
completely.
in. They didn't even fight that.
Yeah. Well, and Ella is like exactly, and also being proactive and going to Ashley to like try and protect their children.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Jason and Fitz talk at the house. Jason asks how Fitz knows Byron, and Fitz is like, well, I taught at the school where Ella taught, so like we kind of got to know each other that way. Jason asks,
Well, and he teaches at the
right, but
Byron.
it was how we got to know him.
Oh
the
yeah,
family.
yeah.
And then Jason asks if he's like, oh, when you taught at the high school, did like you have Arya? And like Fitz is like, and it's just like in one of your classes, and it's like, oh yes, I did. Arya digs around in Mike's room and finds the vase candle holder that Jenna had made and is shocked. Arya walks downstairs and is like, hey, both of you men, leave. Jason is like, okay, all right, I guess it's time to go.
Not the first time I've been shoot out of that door.
Yeah. This is one of the nicer ways. Fitz is...
I meant her door specifically, and she's like, thanks.
Oh, that's right. When she slammed the door on him. Fitz is shaken, though. Fitz is like, hey, like, are you sure you don't want me to stick around? And like, no, like both of you should leave. And Fitz is like, okay, talk tomorrow. And she's like, yep. And then Fitz, or not Fitz, Jason then gives both of them like kind of like a weird look. The two men then leave as the door closes and they're both standing on the porch. Jason gives them some more weird looks until they both kind of go like, okay, good night.
Yeah, Jason's like, good night.
Jason's like, what the fuck was that? Caleb talks to a client on the phone as Hannah looks uncomfortable. Caleb then hangs up and looks at her and is like, hey, don't you start with me. And Hannah says like, well, I'm worried about you. Caleb says, don't pry. And Hannah's like, okay, fine, I won't. Hannah then makes small talk and Caleb acquiesces. And Caleb's like, okay, let me tell you, when I was living in...
I like how you referred to her minor like ramble on if extensions should be real hair or acrylic as small talk. Mm-hmm. You've done so good. You've come so far.
Thank you. And then Caleb's like, okay, back when I was living in... I missed it the first time, but I caught it the second time. I think it's like Ant Town or something. And I like ran into actual bad guys who stole cars. And he's like, I did some work for them, hacking into the DMV and laundering VIN numbers. He's like, no one got hurt, but I was worried that it was like sooner or later it was going to happen. So I got out. They tried to track me down, but I was gone. Caleb's like, so I know the difference between like what's good and sketchy.
What's sketchy and criminal.
Thank you. Hannah mentions maybe he should tell the cops, and Caleb says, I know the difference between being honest and suicidal. Hannah asks if he's told anyone else about this before, and Caleb says no, so please, like, I would appreciate it if you don't tell anyone else. Hannah agrees. Spencer walks downstairs in her house and sees Peter in front of the fire with the hockey stick end.
The way you said sees Peter, like he lives there.
But Peter... Dad?
What are you doing here?
Aren't you supposed to be somewhere else? You're never here. Honestly, I would be surprised if he was home. The rate the Hastings are.
That's fair.
She then runs to stop him, and he says, let go, and fights her away. And we get like some ominous music as he like raises above her head. Peter says, I can do whatever I want with the things found on my property, and I'm going to burn this. He's like, I'm done fielding questions over all this murder and all these cops things calling over. I'm done. This is over. Spencer's like, could be important. This could be like a piece of evidence. Peter says, oh, like the trophy you found? Spencer says, like, I didn't put it in the yard. Peter's like, it doesn't matter who put it there. It means nothing and doesn't exist. Then throws it into the fire. Toby and Spencer meet at their town lookout spot and discuss the burning of the field hockey stick. Spencer says he must think that I killed her, or that he's like always thinking that like I'm trying to do something for attention, and like he's always going to think about this until they find Allie's killer. Spencer says we don't even know like what actually killed her in terms of like murder weapon. Toby says, well, the cops probably do. They always hold back information, and I bet they even know like it's listed in some report what like weapon was used. Hannah and Emily discuss Caleb being open with Hannah. And Hannah asks, like, hey, Emily, like, are you okay? Like, knowing that, like, there's a secret that, like, I can't tell you that, like, Caleb told me. Like, are you okay at least, like, knowing, like, in general that I, like, can't tell you about this? And Emily says yes. Hannah says, hey, you know what? Like, it's all going to be okay with your life and, like, a lie about college. We're all going to figure this out. You're going to get that scholarship. You're going to go to Danby. And then they both talk about Caleb coming back for Hannah and how great that is, and they agree on them. But then they overhear Ashley and Tom arrive home, and we can kind of see that they've probably been drinking a little bit. They kiss at the foot of the stairs and then try to sneak upstairs as the girls hide in Hannah's room. Arya drops the bag of Mike's stuff at his feet, and Arya says, you stole, like, can't believe you stole all this stuff. You stole from a blind girl, and holds up the candle holder. Mike's like, no, I didn't. I know where this came from. This definitely came from Officer Garrett's apartment. I don't remember his last name.
Reynolds.
Thank you. And he's like, he apparently, like, I, like, broke in there.
Makes it sound like he's like a campus security officer. Officer Garrett. He's cool with the kids, you know?
That's right. But he'll bust you for weed.
Well, and he's dating one of them.
Yes. Yeah, he's really cool with kids. Mike says,
bad.
Yeah. Mike says he, like, broke in there because he's like, I might need a gun to get away. He's like, but I just ended up taking this and a GPS.
I thought it was like a camera.
A camera and a GPS?
I took a camera from someone else.
He mentions taking a GPS. Spencer is then shown meeting with Garrett, like, in his car. Spencer asks Garrett if the police know what the murder weapon was for Allie. Garrett says it's probably in the coroner's report, but again, all of these facts, they're just going to continue to lead back to Ian. He's the murderer. Spencer says, I'm not so sure, and Garrett asks, hey, why? But then he's interrupted by the police radio. Spencer then gets a text from Arya saying they can't trust Garrett. Garrett then finishes his conversation over the radio and asks Spencer who she thinks killed Allison. We then cut away to a gloved hand that opens up a case with a vial and syringe. The gloved hand fills up the syringe and then squeezes it into some sort of plastic bottle.
Almost like a tube of cream or something.
Didn't look like a tube of cream at the time, but I bet if you went back and looked at it, maybe it does.
But... yeah, it 100% does.
Okay, perfect. The end.
When you know what it is, you're like, yeah.
Yeah, there it is. Got it.
I'm like, oh yeah, it's a steroid cream. Okay. What's Garrett's plan? What's going on here?
Yeah, he's got to keep him close. That's what he's trying. He's trying to, like, run interference for them. So, like, always trying to be like, I'm your confidant. Like, similarly of, like, how he ran the bogus bag drop off from last season. He always wants to be there to be interference to, like, guide them in some way away from a truth he knows.
Okay.
Yeah. Because obviously, I think both Garrett and Jenna, think that Jason did it.
Okay.
I still think Melissa wrote I think I said Melissa wrote the note in Jason's pocket. I still think that was Melissa.
Okay.
Because then they mentioned that's in the next episode that they mentioned, like, Jason's thing.
Yeah. I have a question on that for later.
I mean, Garrett's just trying to be as close to these four because they're the ones that are digging, so I can hopefully try and mitigate a lot of the things they're trying to dig up.
So is Garrett protecting Jason?
No. I think whatever it is, keeping that hidden is mutually beneficial to him and Jenna.
Got it. Okay.
I think he's protecting himself first, but, like, doing it under the auspices of helping out Jenna because right now their partnership is mutually beneficial. This is all hearsay, and
I mean, we don't hold you to any.
Right,
of this.
Exactly. Yeah.
The show is.
We're just gonna say right up top. This is all me just, like, pulling, like, maybe this would be it. Maybe this would be it.
I mean, that's the point, honey.
Exactly.
You can't know.
Uh-huh.
And trust me, you can't know. Could you have predicted steroid cream on season 1?
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
I was wondering where that was going to go.
They bring it around pretty quickly.
Yeah. I knew she was going to get injured, but I didn't think about the steroid cream. Because, you know how she's rubbing her neck?
Mm-hmm.
All episode, it was just like... Because I missed it the first time. I was like, wait a minute. She's doing it again. I need to write this down as, like, a thing because this is going to come up later. And it does next episode.
What's going on with Mike?
Yeah. So I mean, he's the stand-in for like the wild child that like, again, if the show is like using a lot of like that affluent suburban like fears of like the usually like teen fears and stuff, it is also incorporating parents' fears of like you can't control your children or what they do, and like you don't see like these types of like these things come out of left field. And instead of doing drugs, which I don't know if this is like a thing they didn't want to touch with like ABC Family, they have him like breaking and entering.
Maya was sent away for smoking weed.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's true. So I guess like just because I guess it's another way of doing like vandalism. And doing that kind of stigmatization of like property crimes, because that's like a big thing, for like suburban people, that you're really worried. Like they even talk about it later. And then in the episode after of like Wayne mentions there's like that whole little like small thread about the alarm going off at like the renters like not feeling safe in their suburban home. So it's
saying it's mostly just a mental thing, basically.
Right. So what do you do when it's like your child who's the one that's like acting reckless and like literally performing like felony crimes? I think that's all it is with Mike, and it is a way to like do a plot line on like how do you like talk to your kid that won't be reached, a little bit like moralistic of how do you like work with your kid that's like out of control, like that kind of fear, and how that affects the family. It's just breaking and entering as like a thing that he has to do is hilarious. I don't think it's gonna tie back into a wider A thing. I think it is gonna like how it ties into the Jenna thing. Not that not the Jenna thing. Jenna thing. But like you find that's how like they learn about Garrett. It's like it's gonna bring up that like kind of like happenstance thing.
Like a catalyst.
Exactly, for other things. I don't think he's gonna be doing any more breaking and entering.
Fair enough.
I think this is most we're gonna get out of Mike in these 2 episodes. Pretty much, we'll probably get like some reconciliation between like him and the parents, maybe, or like him and Arya. But it's almost like not even about Mike's stuff isn't about Mike. Mike isn't really a character. It's about everybody else in the family. It's about how it affects like Ella specifically, because Ella has to mitigate her husband and also like figure out how she can like help her child, and then how it affects Arya, who is now being like pushed in the orbit more of Jason, because they have this like she feels this like shared connection with him for like being nice to Mike and things, and which I also find it is funny. We'll see if it follows up again that Jason, we have no idea what Jason does with his free time, but apparently he's like turned over this new leaf that he wants to be like a interventionist with like at-risk teens at the high school. But we don't know enough about Jason to
I think that's because of his whole he was so afraid that what he did when he was on drugs or drinking or whatever the hell we're supposed to think he was doing that night, that he was so afraid of who that person was that he wants to prevent people from feeling that way.
Right.
That's like the concept I get from it.
Totally. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. But then and then also why he felt that kinship to Mike. It was very funny. It was like Mike probably
I was like that. Yeah, I probably meant it when I said it too.
Right. Like that that's why I think of drugs, because it's like
I could stop anytime concept.
Exactly, and like the addiction, but it's like an addiction to property crime.
Yeah.
It's absurd in a really funny way.
It's an odd way to act out.
Right.
It's not the first I mean, Hannah was stealing things too. Like it's not like theft is a common way for teens to. I say common. I mean, like I don't think it's.
But the shoplifting thing sat better with
than
me.
Breaking and entering.
Right, yeah, that he's like doing this like string of like crimes around town.
Well, and also like I was like maybe like a gun or something to get away. Why do you need a gun, Mike?
And why are you going to a police officer's house to steal things? Damn, that's another thing with like, again, like drugs. It's like that idea that you are hitting bottom, that you get more and more reckless with your actions.
And Arya did not question this trying to acquire a gun business. She goes, why'd you steal Jenna's pottery?
Right. Well, because Jenna, the word Jenna comes up and her entire orbit gets messed up.
And we saw in the last episode, Arya's crisis response is freeze.
Yes, I understand.
Fight, flight, and
when
freeze.
I was editing the episode and that came back up, it made me laugh again.
It's so true.
It's really funny.
Okay, cool. So Mike's just out there being a teenage boy with big feelings.
I'm just a teenage dirtbag baby.
Let's talk about the meeting of the moms.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think it's really good. Like, I think this show is good about having the characters debrief about what the hell is going on, but it's always the girls.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't get the parents have always kind of been.
No, if they didn't debrief, we would have no idea what the plot was on this show.
Well, it's even more debriefing, but they're talking about their feelings on the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Which which is good to it's nice to hear the characters offer their opinions, so you get a very good idea of how Spencer feels about things, how Hannah feels about things, when certain people feel derisively, blah 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 blah. But so I think it's really nice to have parents take a more active role rather than just being these kind of passive stand-ins for things. Mm-hmm. So then you get those new insights from Ashley on Peter that adds a fun new wrinkle to who the hell is Mr. Hastings.
Mm-hmm.
But then also,
who is Mr. Hastings?
Exactly. And then what else is could they potentially get involved in? But then we also hear about hey, we're really worried about our children. And have these really relatable, understandable things. It's we want to figure out what's best to protect our kids because they're not telling us the whole thing and they're not going to.
Mm-hmm.
And then also acknowledging their failures.
Mm-hmm.
In a way, maybe this is more because this is maybe a little bit better parenting that you might think. These are very, parents that are very in tune with not interfering with their children on this stuff, but trying to figure it out on their own.
Mm-hmm.
That is it's oh, this would be look at this nice way that these moms are running things that you might not actually see, but I really appreciated it.
I like it. Do you think there'll be more parent drama because of these kind of alliances forming, I guess, for lack of a better phrase?
Right. Yeah, because I love that you get that about the Hastings, that the Hastings are just in, and I think that also adds flavor to the town, or at least not the town,
to the dynamic of the group.
Exactly. You want, because you get it also from Toby too in these episodes. Not Toby, Caleb in the next episode. That the Hastings are just on another level. They're not connected. They are instrumental in the town, but they are not connected to the town.
Mm-hmm.
Because of their status. It's different, and so then, it's really cool to understand that both of these two people don't feel comfortable going to even Mrs. Hastings.
Mm-hmm.
To talk about this.
Mm-hmm.
So you get more of that dynamic playing out.
Definitely. Let's talk about the hockey stick.
Yeah. Because
is it the murder weapon? And you got to lock in your answer forever, and if you're wrong, perfect. You lose $1 million.
I'm going to say no.
Okay.
Okay, maybe I'm gonna say yes.
Are you?
I didn't have a convincing reason for why no.
I mean, that doesn't mean yes.
Yeah, it just matches it a lot. I mean, I could say no that it's a red herring, but then trying to understand why, because obviously Mr. Hastings, Peter, comes up to it and then immediately recognizes that something's up.
Yeah, he does panic.
Yeah,
he panics
even before, as soon as he sees Toby dig something up, he's wait a minute, what's that?
Drop it.
Totally, exactly. Toby.
Toby's a really good Labrador name.
A really good Labrador name. And
it's a great human name too. Don't get me wrong, but
we love Toby here with fur, not fur.
We've got a Spoby fan in the house.
Yes, we do. And so, obviously Peter knows something else, and I don't know if this is connected to, I don't think he's trying to protect the girls, but it could be that he's, whatever his connection is with Mrs. De Laurentiis, that he's trying to protect Jason and thinks this could be
You think he's trying to protect Jason?
Yeah.
Okay.
because he doesn't want anything like coming back on like them.
Got it.
And so if he thinks that Jason did something, and also like it could be feasible that whatever the night Allie did something and Jason doesn't remember, or not did something, Allie disappeared and Jason doesn't remember anything, he could have run into his mom, to which his mom then calls Peter to then help bury something. And that could have been this. And so he doesn't want anything coming back on him. Because if it is something that police happen, that could be it. So that's my best guess. Because I'm still under the understanding, or at least the idea, that Mr. Hastings and Miss De Laurentiis had some sort of fling going on. Affair.
Fair enough. I guess we'll find out.
Yeah.
Toby and Mr. Hastings.
I love it. Like I said, like Toby just like treating him very hostily while not backing down. Like he doesn't lie about anything. He's just completely like, I've already told Spencer.
Mm-hmm.
But
I
he does.
know I wasn't supposed to.
Right. The only thing he does lie about is her reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Totally makes sense, because you want to get the information out of him while not burning the bridge. Do I think this is going to burn a bridge with like Toby and Mr. Hastings, and Toby getting, say, that nursery extension contract job, or like his plans for the barn being like repossessed? I think that would have happened anyway.
Do you think that because Spencer didn't react to it to Toby, like Toby didn't think she reacted to it, that
I think there's still going to be a knock-on effect, because like Toby might know a little bit too much. It might be like, hey, Toby, this is all good back here. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Let me pay you out. Which I could see it going that way. But yeah, I like seeing Peter on the back foot.
Yeah.
Toby not backing down. Toby, again, our paragon for like, don't tell the cops. And then like you got to figure this out on your own. Like,
yep, we're gonna Nancy Drew this together.
Yeah, you gotta follow Toby's example. And also, when someone tries to shake you down, you don't bow to them.
No. Let's talk about Arya's love triangle and the dinner party.
Yes, it's so funny. To go back to Jason being like, I'm here to like mentor like at-risk teens out of like, because I just want to like do this.
Because I was an at-risk teen.
Exactly.
And an affluent at-risk teen.
And then just at the dinner party, he's like the nice one where we get like Fitz being like jealous and like being pushy with her, even going to the dinner party. It's just it's like so telegraphed, just setting it up. It's just like, you're going to move over to Jason. You gotta like, maybe I'm thinking Jason's a little better. Again, ignoring the absurdity of these like 23-year-old men being like the love interest for this like 16-year-old. But it's fun seeing Fitz like in scramble mode and like completely losing composure of like being like trying to be overly doting and in her business and not leaving her alone, and being like, what about like this guy? And Arya being like, he's a friend of the family. Like, what do you? Yeah. You can't get jealous over this.
Yeah.
Even if there was nothing going on, which is great. So it's just all like pushing towards Jason, which is a fun concept. But the best part is that Jason knows that something's going on between them now. And there's like that small slip, and then he's immediately just like, what? Like, this is weird. I mean, he doesn't really have like a great foot to stand on, but
he was never her teacher.
Yes, exactly. He was not mentoring her.
Yes.
So,
well, we really don't know how old he is. We assume he graduated college. So I
thought he said he graduated college.
So he would be 22.
23.
Yeah.
Again, nasty grooming age gap. This show. Then we get another one next episode. This show really does not.
No.
Care.
It's bad.
Because it's like, they're like, well, we can just put two 20-year-olds together, like, as long as the actors.
I honestly think it has less to do with that and more to do with the fact of like the time we lived in at that time. Like, it wasn't normalized, but it wasn't like as.
I think this is more just a product of the fiction rather than like
a commentary on when we lived.
Exactly. Yeah. Because like I said, we've been over it a few times, but this is just like a thing that pops up a lot. And so, because even like you said, like the guy who played Fitz, I forget his name right now, Ian Harding, was like, oh, it's like, oh, we're getting like calls to cancel the show. And he's like, oh, is it because of my character?
Yeah, it must be because of my character. Like, yeah. That's, or not to cancel the show. They had, I think like a sponsor pulled.
Oh, there you go. I meant
sponsor pulled.
I meant like cancel as in like cancel culture.
But that didn't exist then.
Right, but I mean,
I'm in 2011 right now. Where are you?
This is like me saying Caleb said fuck.
I'm on Tumblr and you're over here like tweeting or something, and I just like don't. We're not here yet. I'm not here yet.
Exactly.
But yes, no.
Fair enough.
That is, and it was actually because it was. I think it was due to Emily's character.
Right.
That sponsors
of course
to pull out.
We don't care about that. Yeah, we don't care about this problematic relationship. We care that someone is gay.
It's just so tragic.
Yeah. And
like the actual issue is ignored.
Yeah, exactly. No one cares.
So bad. But yeah, so
we would rather indulge in this fantasy than even try and like even tolerate this other one.
This one that's age appropriate and totally normal. So back to the love triangle. Are you team Jaria or team Ezria?
Jaria.
Are you Jaria? Okay.
Yeah, I didn't. Have we established that it's Jaria? And I
think
forgot?
you have called it Jaria, and I'm running with it.
Perfect. I love it.
I assume that's got to be right.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I'm much more.
Like, if not, it'd be like arson.
Right. And at this point, even if we were gonna scrape away the grossness of the teacher thing, I think, or just on his own, Jason is a more interesting character, and there's a whole lot more going for him.
We don't know anything about Ezra.
No, and like we get so many good positives about Jason's character in these episodes.
Yeah.
I don't want to turn in Mike. I understand he's an at-risk youth. Arya, he's very like attuned to Arya's emotions. Arya is not your fault. Like Mike is doing this on his own. Like blah blah blah. Like you don't have to blame yourself. So it's hard not to.
I love it,
especially by comparison.
Speaking of another couple, let's talk about Haleb. Haleb's plot point here is so bad.
It's so bad. Especially
I was in with some real criminals. Like,
right.
Nothing good is coming when a line is delivered that way.
I know. And like
you can't blame the actor. Like
no. And I don't mind that too much. What I do mind is that these episodes turn Hannah into like a narc and a nanny, and then like a nagging spouse almost to him.
Exactly. And it's not like he's like he's like jailbreaking people's phones. He's not like breaking, like it's not like a real crime.
Totally. By not having the clarity on what he's actually doing, we can only assume that it's like petty. It's like, oh no, like
now I have unlimited texting.
Right, exactly. Oh no, now this guy can play ROMs on his phone. Like it's like, who cares? But it's treated as like this big thing. So it's super interesting what is treated as like
problematic.
Exactly, yeah. And like crimes on this show. Yeah, and I think they're just trying to like
Mike's committing more crimes right now. He stole from a cop.
Right. And I understand why like Emily would feel uncomfortable with this, because Emily is the most virtuous.
But Hannah steals from stores.
Right, exactly. Again, Emily being Catholic.
We've created this whole alternative universe where Emily's Catholic.
She's canonically Catholic, even if she's not. But yeah, it just so then we get like things where like then Caleb is being an ass of being like stereotypical like horrible like husband. You could say emotionally abusive.
He's being a horrible person.
Yeah, of just being like, don't start with me.
Don't nag me. And it's like
those classic, yeah.
Yeah, it's so dumb because it's like not really a thing.
No. So I hate across both these episodes, I do not like. And especially where they're because they're trying to like have them grow through an issue, but this ain't it.
This isn't good for third act Hannah.
No.
They're backsliding.
Exactly. And it's not Hannah's character, like you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Hannah shoplifted. Who cares?
My final question on this episode.
Mhm.
What plot lines, if any, do you think will be forgotten?
I can see them not tying a bow on Mike's now that they've like had the reveal of like Garrett not being trustworthy.
Mm-hmm.
And then trying to think what else is going on. I think that's the main one, and they might drop the parents one too. I can see them not prioritizing that, which I think is interesting and would be a bummer.
Totally.
Yeah.
But you think we will find out about the hockey stick?
Yeah, I think the hockey sticks, because it goes across both of these episodes.
And because Spencer knows about it.
Yeah, that is right. That is a great indication. Absolutely.
If the plot point doesn't touch Spencer, odds are 50-50 on
Right,
if we
it's
ever
gonna
see it
drop.
again. But if it touches Spencer or Emily on a good day.
Right, exactly. Emily. on Spencer's off week. Yeah, that is absolutely true.
All right. Well, those are my questions for you. Anything else you want to talk through on that episode?
No, we covered all the things I wanted to talk about. Yeah, just I'm glad we covered the ridiculous of Haleb's situation. But yeah, I'm ready for the next episode.
Okay.
Episode 30, Save the Date. Open on the neighborhood view as we pan to Hannah, Aria, and Spencer in the car talking about interacting with Garrett. Aria wonders why Jenna gave Garrett the pottery. Hannah mentions that they live across the street from each other. Maybe just goes over there, or she goes over there and like walks his dog or something. Emily leaves her old house, and Hannah mentions that Emily is there to check in on the renters because they keep setting off the alarm. Emily then gets in the car and mentions that the renters probably like are keeping it on because they don't feel safe. And Hannah's like, well, they will now that Mike's been caught. Aria and Spencer both very annoyed with her talking like this, but then they see Garrett pull up down the street and they see him go into Jenna's house. Spencer mentions that Toby is gone picking up his parents from the airport. They then see Garrett get out of his car. Brenton goes into Jenna's house, and the friends all get out of the car and approach on foot and sneak around the back. They then see a light suddenly go on as Jenna is looking directly at them. She takes off her glasses and robe as Garrett rounds the corner and they start making out.
And this is a scene where I was like, is Garrett blind?
Right, how did you not see them? They're literally right there.
One, they just all stood there.
They
They didn't crouch. They weren't hiding. They weren't even pretending to hide. Like,
Deer in the headlights. No sneaking involved.
Well, you know what happens when they see Jenna, though. Everyone just goes into panic mode.
It's just really funny. It's just like, let me turn on the light. And I thought she had opened up the blinds too for like, as we make out here.
I think she just turned on the light.
Right. Emily's into Hannah's kitchen and is doing sit-ups. And Hannah's like, what are you doing? Stop that. Like, you're like working out way too much. They discuss being freaked out by Garrett. Hannah offers Emily orange juice, and Emily's like, no, not that much amount. I need to watch my sugar intake. Hannah's like, are you always like this before meat? And Emily says, it's important. This meat is really important because the Danby rep is coming. Emily then asks Hannah to pass her icy hot gel, and Hannah's like, hey, maybe you should watch like how much you're using. Like, you just got that bottle. Emily's like, no, it's okay. It helps. Tom then walks downstairs with his hair all messed up and telling Hannah, like, hey, like, the decision to stay over was, like, spur of the moment.
Well, she, like, kind of presses it. It's not like he just...
like, walked in, hey, me and your mom had sex last night. Ashley walks in, and Emily tells her, he's like, hey, I got brought in yesterday's mail there. And then they notice on there a card addressed to Hannah Marin. Hannah grabs it and is like, and puts it under her coffee cup, and it's like, it's from Isabel. Ashley grabs the card from under the coffee cup, opens it up, and it's an invitation to Tom's wedding in 6 weeks. What a winner. Spencer looks at old newspaper articles about Allie's death on her laptop. She hears a knock on the door and closes it and goes to open it and sees it's Ren there with flowers. Remember him? He's there hoping to catch Melissa, and Spencer says she's out of town spending time in Philadelphia, I believe. since like the funeral. Ren mentions he's like, hey, I'm now like kind of living in town because I'm at a rotation at a local hospital. Spencer asks Ren like, hey, have you ever done an autopsy? And he's like, no.
Last week we had, have you ever seen a dead body? This week.
This is the bit from Airplane where it's just like, hey, Tommy, you ever watched like Gladiator movies? You ever seen Grown Man Naked? And Spencer tries to play it off as like, it's like, oh, it's just for a school project I was interested in. He's like, no, I don't. But like the hospital pathologist performs the autopsies. He's like, hey, you know, what are you doing? And she's like, I gotta go to school. And he's like, well, like, let me take you to coffee. And Spencer's like, no, like,
I have a boyfriend.
It's like, you weren't just here to see Melissa, are you? And it's like, I have a boyfriend now. And he's like, well, that's fine. How about tea?
Because coffee is a romantic drink.
Right. Yes, it is. Not tea. Emily and Hannah walk to school. Emily goes over her intense training schedule before the meet, and Hannah's like, hey, you should really like take it easy, because Emily's talking about like practicing before the meet, and Hannah's like, you definitely shouldn't do that. Hannah and Emily see Haleb dealing with a new client. Hannah notices Hannah notices a car across the street watching Haleb, and walks over to it and sees from over her shoulder, as like she's pretending to be not being noticed, that the guy has a file with Haleb in it. Hannah then runs over and interrupts Haleb from doing his deal and is like, hey, you don't want to do this here. And the guy like runs off. He was like buying drugs or something. It's just like, gotta get out of here, man. Caleb gets mad at Hannah and he's like, hey, it's like, no, stop doing this. This is what I do for money. I'm not going to get some like burger flipping job, and walks off. Hannah sees the car pull away.
Okay, Caleb, we don't talk crap on any sort of food service worker because they make the world go round.
Totally.
You ever been hungry?
Mm-hmm.
And 2, Hannah just didn't want you to get caught.
Right. Apparently, which is a big crime, and the kid knew it.
Well,
Jailbreaking isn't that important. Also, like, if Caleb is involved in like other bigger crimes, like, what is he like responsible for?
He's a child.
But like, if he's involved in like bigger, say, cybersecurity crimes or like hacking on phones, like, what sort of privacy invasions is he enabling his like clients to do? I digress.
Mm-hmm.
If it is that big, which I don't think it is, I don't think they quite understand what it is either. Just vague.
Caleb is a technology plot point.
Fairly, yeah.
You need technology to be explained. Bring in Caleb.
But this seems like tech from like my parents. What my parents would think would be like tech crimes.
Who do you think wrote the show?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Garrett stops Spencer at school.
I have no idea. I mean, like, I know Marlene King wrote it,
right,
but like I don't know who all the writers were. But
yeah, it's just like these kids in technology, they're doing all sorts of crimes.
There's coding and there's technology.
I heard they're hacking phones. Garrett stops Spencer at school. Spencer's like, what are you doing here? And he's like, oh, I'm here like to teach. It's my turn teaching driver's ed class. And he's like, hey, Spencer, we need to finish our conversation from last night. And Spencer's like, oh, I was just like asking questions because like I was just curious after like reading something online, and you know, it's whatever. Like, no need to worry about it. We don't need to figure out. Like, it's all good. Ian did it. All right, bye-bye. And Garrett looks suspicious. Mike is walking around in school and gets stopped by another jock at school, and he's like asking him like, is it true like about your stealing? Like, what are you going to be doing? What's next? You're going to like live as a junkie? Like, and just like keeps pressing on him. So then Mike tries to take a like pushes him, and then Ella runs over from down the hall and is like, hey, stop it, dismisses them. Ella tries to like ask to speak to him, and Mike just storms off. Yeah, to which you replied, it's like, don't ask.
Yep. Yeah, no, treat him like a toddler. You know what you don't do? You don't ask a toddler, do you want to put your shoes on? You say, do you want to put your right shoe or your left shoe on first?
You know, you could have been there to coach Ella.
Do you want to put your blue socks or your green socks on? Do you want to play nice with your friend, or do you want to come talk to mom?
Mm-hmm. Two binaries. Aria is painting her pottery at pottery class, and Fitz walks in saying, he's like, hey, I saw you race by like my building and didn't know like you were coming to campus today. Had his like binoculars on. Fitz asks how things are at home, And Aria tells Fitz about Mike breaking and entering into people's houses, and that he was gonna break into Jason's, and Jason like stopped him. And Fitz is like, "Oh, like the Jason from the other night? Is that what you two were talking about?" Fitz asks like about a specific piece of pottery, picks it up, and he's like, "Hey, is this yours? This looks nice." And Aria's like, "No, it's Jenna's."
Who's like sitting in a pottery room and assumes that like the person made everything?
Right. What about this? What about this?
This girl's painting a bowl.
I know.
And I mean, it's beautiful.
Right.
I can't do that.
But he didn't even look at the name or anything underneath.
Yeah.
And Arya mentions that Jenna dropped the class. Fitz asks why Arya didn't tell him about Mike. And she's like, "Well, I didn't tell anybody." Fitz says, "You can always tell me about anything. Why don't you come over later? We'll talk about it." And Arya's like, "Okay." Fitz asks, like, as he's leaving, he's like, "Hey, should I be worried about, like, you and Jason?" And she says no. Emily sees that her dad is at school, and he comes over, and he's like, "Oh, well, I wanted to, like, sorry to soil the surprise. Like, I wanted to surprise you for your meet. I was, like, doing a training in, like, Delaware and got stuck from flying back. So then I just decided I'd drive over." Wayne is like, "Hey, I'm really excited to meet this Danby rep." And Emily's all shaken up about this. Wayne then leaves, and Emily goes to like grab her bag as she suddenly cries out in pain from her side and continues to cry out in pain as she falls to the ground. Garrett then runs up from down the hall as she's screaming and calls an ambulance. We then see Emily is in the hospital with her dad, and she's talking about how she found out that she has an ulcer. Wayne tells her that, hey, swimming is off the table for a moment, but don't worry about the scholarship. They're not going to withdraw the offer. And Emily's like, "You don't know that." Wayne says, "It's all right. Let me handle it. You know what? I'll call the scout. Like, do you have his number? Like, I'll talk to him." And Emily's like, "No, I'll call him." Hannah and Spencer arrive at the hospital, and Hannah is, of course, being ever so delicate, like talking to Spencer about it. And it's like, "Don't old people get ulcers?" Spencer's like, "You gotta wipe that look off your face. You're really gonna freak Emily out." Hannah mentions like the time she spent at the hospital when she was hit with a car. And then Hannah gets a call from Haleb, but just silences it. And Spencer's like, "Hey, what's going on?" And Hannah says that she saw an undercover cop following him. And Spencer's like, "Why was like the cop following him?" And Hannah says like, "I don't want to talk about it." As the elevator door is closed, then Spencer's like, "Well, you have to because we're in an elevator and you have nowhere else to go." Hannah's like, "All right, like I don't want to tell him about the cop because like he might run." Spencer says if the cops are after him, you're probably going to lose him anyway. Ashley looks at the wedding invite at home as Tom walks in. Ashley tells him about Emily being in the hospital. Tom tries to offer to drive her there, and Ashley's like, no, you should just go home. Ashley says it's not fair to anybody that you're staying around here and all this, and that, like, I need to be with a man who's sure of what he wants, and that was never you.
We love it.
Better late than never. Tom looks sad, leaves his key to the house, and goes. Hannah does a really bad job of making Emily feel better. Spencer keeps intervening on this and tells her to eventually shut it. Aria arrives saying, like, talking about, like, "Sorry I'm late. Mike didn't show up to his trial." Emily mentions, it's like, "You know what? I can't keep this in because of, like, the ulcer. Like, I'm going to have to tell my parents the truth." Spencer then navigates around the hospital and sees the sign for like that lists like where all the rooms are and like the departments, and sees the pathologist's office location. Ren then startles Spencer from behind. These men, they're just
It's in the basement, which in most doctors' offices that I go to, but it's probably true in hospitals. But that's also where they do your blood work. Blood work's always in the basement.
Mm-hmm. But it's funny like this. The basement is exactly like what you'd think it is, like very dark and eerie, and like the fluorescent lights are low.
Yeah, you never been in a scary haunted hospital basement before?
No.
You don't hang out in those?
I don't. Not usually. Ren startles her from behind. These men. And says, "Oh, Emily's on the 3rd floor. I saw her chart." Both of them then enter the elevator. And Spencer asks, "Oh, well, how's Emily doing?" And Ren's like, "Well, I haven't been able to see her yet, but I think she's stable." The door opens to a lower level floor, the basement, and Spencer tries tries to play it off like she's gonna walk out, and Ren stops her and is like, "You need the third floor." Spencer then continues to try and play it cool and asks, "Hey, what was like on that floor, just for funsies?" And Ren is like lists the places off, including pathology and the morgue.
Mm-hmm. As well as like the kitchen and
right, the mess
laundry
hall.
room.
Yeah. Jenna and Garrett are in his car. Jenna asks what makes him so sure they know. Garrett tells her about like Spencer like inquiring about the murder weapon. Jenna then is like, "What did you just say?" Garrett says nothing and like tells her about Spencer running off. Jenna asks like if they know about Jason. Garrett says no, but they're definitely questioning whether he killed her. Plot thickets. Love these moments with these two.
Mm-hmm. They really are just driving the plot together.
Totally. It's the most Organization 13 moment. Ren enters Emily's room to check on her. He says that Emily's panels came back with high levels of HGH. Emily is shocked because she doesn't dope. Have you met the girl? Ren advises her that it will come up on tests if she keeps swimming. Emily says, well, the tests are wrong. And Ren's like, I checked them twice. Emily asks if he's told her dad, and Ren says, no, but you're a minor, so I will have to. Funny how you know she's a minor. What about Spencer? What about the one you want to take to coffee? Emily says, I'll take the test again. Just like, don't say anything. Ren says, okay, I'll see what I can do. Haleb stands waiting for someone in town. He then notices a black car kind of pull up, and someone gets out and walks down like an alleyway. Hannah then pulls up in her car with a headscarf and glasses on and tells him to get in, and they drive off as the driver from the car like sees them and runs around the corner to like watch them go. Aria gets off on the basement floor, and Spencer grabs her into her room to change into a candy striper uniform. Mike sits in his room on his laptop typing a paper. Ella enters the room to ask about the school fight and why he didn't show up to his trial. Emily asks why he broke into someone's house. Like, what were you looking for? Mike says nothing. I don't want to talk about this. I'm not looking for anything. Ella says, like, well, we have to talk about this. Mike says, oh, we're back on your schedule now? Like, when are you moving out again? And then, like, storms off in a huff. We see a house on a lake, and Hannah and Caleb enter it as Hannah turns on the light. Caleb is like, whose place are we staying at? And mentions that it belongs to Spencer's family, and Caleb says, well, yeah, so does most of Pennsylvania. They then light a fire, and Hannah tells Caleb that someone is following him. Caleb says, oh, like I didn't notice him, but, you know, then again, just stop looking. My past, always catching up to me. Hannah asks if he's been followed before, if it has something to do with his past in Allentown. There we go, not Anttown. Haleb says it might be, but he doesn't want to hide anymore. The guy can just come up and ask me whatever he wants to know. I'm not hiding. Hannah is like, are you going to skip town? And Caleb's like, nope, not this time. I'm not going anywhere. Hannah's like, well, if you do, can I come with? And they make out. We see a nurse go into Emily's room to change out the food, and Emily then wakes up and is like, oh no, sorry, I haven't eaten that. Like, please don't take that yet. And he's like, okay, and leaves. Emily then notices a paper, like the cover that you put on like glasses, like the paper, like beverage,
like
covers.
a
Topper, thank you. With a note on it that's from A that says, hey, Em, some cream with your coffee? Emily then opens up the food container and sees her icy hot gel on top of the food. And is horrified. What would have happened if the food got taken?
I'm like, is this girl good?
Or it's like, why did she put her icy hot like on top of the food? Spencer and Aria try to calm Emily down about this. Aria comments on A having access to her medicine cabinet. Spencer says, don't worry, your medical records are private. Emily says, not to our parents, we're minors. Emily says, A's getting to us. I need to leave. I need to go to Texas. Spencer says, the hell you are. And verbally grabs her by the scruff on the neck like we are in too deep. But she says, like, we are so close to finding things out and who A is. Wayne then comes in, and Aria and Spencer play off that they're like just starting their first day on the job.
Like volunteering.
Yeah, because they're in their candy striper uniforms. Emily then goes to tell the truth to Wayne, and Wayne interrupts saying, you know what? Your mother and I talked, the scholarship, it isn't worth it. You don't need to drive yourself to have ulcers, and you can swim if you want to, or not if you don't. As long as you're having fun, there are dozens of colleges out there, and we can help find a way to pay for them. We just want you to be happy whether they have a pool or not. Emily cries as they embrace.
Mm-hmm.
Spencer and Aria find the morgue. Aria's like, it's freezing in here, and Spencer's like, be thankful for that. Spencer is so intense this episode. I love it. Aria gets freaked out and wants to leave, and Spencer says, you're not doing anything. I am. Just watch the door. They dig through the file cabinet and find Allie's autopsy. Ashley's cleaning out the fridge of all of Tom's things, like beer. As Hannah comes home, Hannah notices...
And that creamer, the creamer she got for him.
The creamer, yeah. And Hannah notices and is just like, hey, like, what are you doing? Like, oh, is he, like, gone? Like, why is he gone? You two were getting along so well again. And Ashley says, this morning made me realize that, like, you know, we can't keep doing this. Like seeing that and, like, that I've grown so much in that time, and he definitely hasn't. Ashley's like, we were indulging in a fantasy. Hannah says, do you want to be with him or not? And Hannah says, no, or not Hannah. Ashley says, no, I don't. And Hannah is pissed and walks away. Aria and Spencer read Allie's autopsy. Allie was facing away from the assailant when she was hit. Oh yeah, Aria also mentions, like, I don't understand any of this. Like, it's so good that, like, you know some of this stuff, Spencer.
Yeah.
Allie was facing away from the assailant when she was hit in the back of the head. She was hit so hard her skull was dented, and the weapon was most likely like a curved, kind of like flat edge. And that there was dirt in her lungs when she died. Spencer then says this meant that the blow didn't kill her and that Allie was buried alive. Dark.
Uh-huh.
Hannah walks down the street and sees the black car and tells it to stop and is like, hey, you need to stop following Caleb. He knows why you're here. Like, just get lost. Like, you don't need to, like, keep doing this, and walks off. Spencer and Aria show Emily the file. Aria then walks out to call Fitz, and Spencer and Emily commiserate about this and say that Jason is looking worse and worse. Spencer even says, like, Aria doesn't want to hear this. Aria and Fitz meet in the waiting room. Fitz asks if she's going... Again, they do all these things in public. Fitz asks if she's going straight home from there, and you can stop by my place. Hey, I'm so sorry that you're sad, but, like,
your friend has ulcers, but, like, I'm right here.
Uh-huh. What about me, Aria?
I don't have any ulcers.
Do I not have needs? I have a hole in my heart. Aria sees a call from Jason and shuts it off. And Fitz is like, oh, like, who was that? And Aria's just like, oh, it was just my dad. Aria's like, well, we can catch up later. And he leaves. The guy in the black car is shown on a phone call. And it says, he's like, yeah, he knows I'm tailing him. And sorry, it doesn't look like he wants to see you. Caleb and Hannah then watch a family get evening desserts like ice cream or something. And Caleb says, hey, maybe you should just like call and talk to your dad about this. And Hannah says, what's the point? Emily and Spencer are looking at the file, and then they notice that the page 5 is missing. But we then see the trash can get changed in the morgue as we kind of see a body twitch, but the janitor doesn't notice this and leaves. The body then sits all the way up and goes to throw off the sheet as the episode ends.
I was on my phone for part of that because I was looking up. I'm pretty sure you can't absorb HGH through your skin and have it. I think you can use it to produce more collagen.
Oh,
like a beauty product. I don't know. Like I don't know if there is one. And I also don't know if like that's in anything. Like I have no idea. I did not get that far in my Googling.
Right.
But I'm pretty sure like it doesn't get in your bloodstream that way. I would assume.
Not to like it wouldn't get in your bloodstream that way to
like to show up on a
like a steroid test.
But I don't know test. That. I have no idea. Because I remember thinking that the first time I watched the show and I was like, oh, I should look that up. And I was like, inconclusive for me.
So
I'm sure
funny.
somebody with like any ounce of like scientific ability could just really quickly like tell me this.
No. I think It seems like very far-fetched. I would probably say no.
I literally wrote down Emily steroids. Who, what, how?
Yeah, it's like amazing. Like, when did she get the icy hot? Like, was it
how did A, we assume, because that was the cutscene we got from the last episode.
Right.
When did A? How did A? Did they swap it out?
Right.
Was it at school?
It would have made more sense if we had seen the icy hot
like left on a table.
Right. And I get that it makes more of an impact when it comes out of left field to say that like HGH that Emily is doping.
Mm-hmm.
But like we see no context for the icy hot before this episode.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like, okay, like
also, do they normally check you for steroids in
high school
when you go in for like ulcers?
Right.
I don't know.
How would that show up on a panel?
I don't know. I have questions and they might have very easy answers, but who's to say?
Right. Okay. It's hilarious.
So that's that, we just always have to poke a little hole at that plot point.
Because it's weird as hell. And it's just very funny, the reveal of like pulling it off of the lid as if like you would find like some horrifying thing under the lid. It's just the icy hot on top of the food.
Uh-huh.
No.
Poor Emily getting ulcers from stress.
Of course Emily would get ulcers from stress.
Spencer's too like iron stomach to get ulcers from stress.
Right. And Emily is the one, like, again, I say Catholic because again, virtuous.
Uh-huh.
She is the most she is the one that doesn't want to lie out of everybody else the absolute most, and all the things that she has gotten caught up with, she wanted to clear up before she was forced into a lie. So she didn't even actually make the first step for this to be a scholarship. She was forced backwards into it. So like, she's the most pure out of all of them. And so of course she's the one that they form like her body is literally attacking her because she like can't do wrong.
Poor Emily.
Seriously. Yeah. So again, Emily is canonically Catholic. Everybody knows that.
But and like Catholic in like the like you feel shame and you think you're supposed to be virtuous way, not like the leaders of the church.
Yes, exactly. Just as in like the colloquial, like
she's metaphorically Catholic,
right? What the members of the church feel, where you talk about shame.
Anyone else recovering from that?
And exactly, and like the very like black and white idea of like how you should behave in good versus evil.
Who's following Haleb?
Yeah, a private detective, I would assume, for his one of his birth parents.
Okay.
It didn't seem like when Hannah. I don't think the why is gonna matter all that much, but I think it's gonna be a thing for Caleb to then get mad at Hannah for like, why did you do that? But I did think it was very fun for this episode that this guy was like following him around, and Hannah just like trying to like cover up again.
Yeah,
hilarious,
with her Thelma and Louise.
Yes, exactly. We got to get out of here. And Hannah, of course, always being aggressive and being like, just bug off.
Yeah, I'll fight you.
So then it was like revealed, it's like, yeah, he doesn't want to talk to you. It's like, oh, it's gonna be one of his birth parents, and this is gonna be like a big thing. In Haleb town. So I'm not no Spoby. There's too much frustration with this Haleb relationship right now. I find it very frustrating.
Yeah, there's a lot of drama in Haleb town.
Got it.
Right now.
Yes. Okay. All right.
It's like where we are.
Yeah, it really is.
You said that like I was telling you something and I was like, no, and you look around.
Yeah, just having. It's like they're telling like this, like one of like my Michael Mann movies that I was like watching. It's like they're telling the story of that from like the perspective of the woman who is like having to like take care of the man who is like doing potentially wrong things and is obsessed with the job. And it's not compelling. Like there's a reason that like that's not the focus of like
the supporting character. Yeah.
Hannah's like the supporting character to Caleb right now of like being like, but I want to protect you. You got to get out of this dangerous business.
She's got horrible plot points right now between her parents and Caleb.
Yeah. I don't know if this is a good time to actually transition into that. I think Hannah, we don't have a good enough reason for why Hannah wants her dad to stay around. Like, I think like
she wants things back to normal.
Like, I guess I kind of get that, but
I think it's like the trauma, like she's stuck in that time. If they're back together, then everything's okay, and then I don't have to deal with stepsister. I don't have to deal with stepmother. I don't have to deal with all these new missing pieces.
Right.
Mom, dad happy, I happy. Like it's just like it's like a
But he didn't seem like involved in her life at all. So I guess I can see that. But I just don't like that they.
I think she finally forgave him.
Right, because I was gonna say Hannah's like also stubborn. And so like I don't know. I didn't feel like we got the work put in for like Hannah to be the one going to bat and not be like, how dare you then like hurt mom again. But I was very happy that like Ashley was very upfront with him.
She's like, you haven't grown.
Exactly. We suck. We never held it against Ashley what she was doing, but it was just like Ashley's got to get a better man.
Well, it's like the end of Center Stage, which is, if you haven't seen it, an excellent film, contrary to what Rotten Tomatoes tells you. And I'm going to spoil the ending. So if you don't want to know the ending of Center Stage, skip like 15 seconds. But at the end, she goes, as a choreographer, you're great. But as a boyfriend, you kind of suck. And 10 out of 10 favorite way to end a film. So I mean, there's more to it, I think, after that. Like there's dancing like or something. But
no, they had already finished all the dancing at that point.
I think like they show her like dancing at his studio after.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Excuse me, who's a stage professional here?
Or does she not go to a studio?
She does go to a studio. She goes to become a principal dancer at his studio because it's the style she likes. And he's a great choreographer, but he's not the man she's meant to be with.
Thank you.
Center Stage talk. It's all over now. But yes, I think it's like that where she just has to be like, no, like this isn't gonna, we can't.
Yeah.
You're gonna get bored. You're gonna leave.
Right. And I think it's very interesting too, the framing that this show is going through with like kids and divorce. That kids are always at least in this show, the kids are always looking for that like same.
We want things back to normal.
Yeah, that like we want dad back in the house.
I think
for both across both of these. Well, mom back in the house, but yeah, Ella didn't seem wrong. Poor Ella.
Yeah, I think it's like the idea too, like when trauma happens and you get stuck in that moment. So it's like I want things back to the way they were before that moment.
Right.
Because if I can go back to that, then that moment doesn't exist.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know how accurate that is, but like that's how I kind of read what they're trying to do with these.
Yeah, and it's also interesting that that's our main way for the parents to like interface with their kids is like marital problems. And like nothing else at the moment. That's why it's exciting when we get like Ella and Ashley actually talking to each other.
Yeah, instead of like Byron weirdly hitting on Ashley.
I'd forgotten about that. Yeah.
Where is page 5 of the autopsy report and what's on it?
When you said page 5, I was like, yeah, where is page?
I don't know where Paige is. I don't know where Samara is, and I don't know where Maya is right now. I couldn't tell you where any of those women are located.
So funny. Page 5 of the autopsy report, I'm going to guess A, because the A is all knowing and all stealing. Maybe we'll get into that in Theory Corner.
Okay. What are Jenna and Garrett talking about with Jason, and do they know who killed Allie?
Yeah, I think this ties back. I don't think they know who killed Allie.
Oh, okay.
But I well, maybe that one's maybe a little bit more up in the air on whether or not they do. But I think they know that Jason thinks, and other people think that Jason killed Allie, and so they want to feed that in that direction for whatever reason that I don't know yet.
Okay.
And I think that ties back into what I said last time with Tom and Miss De Laurentiis and Melissa.
You mean Peter?
Oh, Peter. Yeah, Peter. Not
like,
Tom.
what does Tom have to do
with this? That's right.
Are you ready to go into your theory corner then?
Yeah. And do you have anything else?
I mean, other than favorite plot points, no.
Okay.
So I thought maybe we would let you run wild with your theories because I think that ties really well into the question I had.
Okay, let's step into Theory Corner. Welcome,
Okay.
everybody. Brenton's Theory Corner, where we run through the theories in the corner and the theories.
And I assume you have theories.
Step into my office, dames and private eyes. Yes, do have theories. So I will like lay out a little bit more. Then again, Jason, I think, is the Black Hoodie. And it is trying to figure out what the hell happened that night. I think a lot of people do think that he killed Allison in multiple.
Right, that night you mean the night Allie died, not the
yes.
night he pushed Ian off the bell tower.
Yes, exactly. Okay. Yeah. And so many people saw Jason do something that was vaguely threatening to Allison, or he might have even like pushed her or shoved her, and like people think that like that was when she died, which she didn't. She died at some point later. And then so Garrett and Jenna saw this. I think Melissa also sees this and writes the note. I'm still on board with Melissa being A. We'll come back to that. And then like I think maybe like Miss De Laurentiis then like sees like Jason come back like drunk and in a huff or something. So then calls in Peter to like help out and maybe like bury that like piece of evidence, which was the hockey stick.
So do you think the mother knows that he killed the sister or thinks he killed the sister?
Potentially, yeah.
Okay.
And so that's like why there's like this icy relationship between them two. And I'll still go with the Melissa's A theory. Motivations yet as of unknown. Still not quite sure exactly what she's trying to do. Trying to fuck with them all for some reason. Trying to get using Allie's death as an excuse to like
really mess
get
with
at
them.
people. Yeah, and trying to figure something out. I think the person that got up. So I think A stole the page 5.
Okay.
Because so A could figure stuff out. I don't know. A doing what they do. But I think the person that was in the morgue was I'm gonna say that was Garrett to try and get the autopsy to find out more. Well, or it could be totally inverse. It's probably actually it could be totally inverse too. That like Garrett has page 5 and A was trying to get the autopsy report.
Okay. Any other A theories?
We're gonna go. Here's just a giant left field theory. I'm just gonna throw out. It's Caleb.
Caleb?
Yep.
Why?
I don't know. It was just like what I just came to me the other day. I'm like, wouldn't that be funny if Caleb was A?
Why would Caleb be A?
God knows. Some sort of past relationship with Allie, as these all seem to be. That's like one of my like potential theories. Like, wouldn't that be funny if that was the case? But I have nothing to connect that back to it.
Okay.
So, but
Poor Hannah.
Yeah, I know. So I don't think that's an actual one. But Allison could still be alive. And then.
But then how do they have an autopsy?
A different body.
Got it.
Yeah.
I was like, you can't autopsy a live person.
Yeah. And then and I do think like Garrett and Jenna are like off the table in terms of that. Because they're running their own operation. But
Team Chaos.
A dark horse candidate could be that it's been Jenna all along and is like playing more victim to Garrett to get him to like do things for her and get things done.
I like this.
Yeah, so I think like that's another potential theory. And then, we just like we don't know enough about Fitz. So like, what you doing, bud?
Hey, what you doing?
Yeah.
Who are you?
Exactly.
Where are you from?
Uh-huh.
What do we know about Ezra Fitz?
Exactly. And just to throw another one, because I have a distinct, if it's not Melissa, I think it's probably a man.
Okay.
And so then like Ren could also be thrown in with the mix.
Why Ren?
just as a dark horse candidate that we don't know about.
Okay, that's fair.
He's a man that we know very little about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so men we know very little about. Ezra.
Yeah.
Ren.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else?
Jason's up there too, but we know way more about him than the other two.
Mm-hmm.
Garrett.
Garrett.
Yeah. And then if you want to throw in love interest, Haleb.
What about parents?
I think again parents are off the table from A.
Okay.
I think it's another. I think they may have intersected like my theory with Peter and Mrs. De Laurentiis.
Mm-hmm.
Jessica, if we will do
call them by their
parody.
first name.
I think it's cover-ups and things, but I don't think they were directly involved, or are A.
Okay. Any final thoughts or theories on your who killed Allison and or who A is?
No, there was nothing. No, there's like more information about Allison's death that is being presented here, but it's nothing else to really sink your teeth in on who might be a killer, things like that.
Do you think there's a universe where A and the killer are the same person?
Yeah, but I don't think that's the case.
Okay.
It wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Totally.
Yeah, that it?
I think that's it, unless you have any other theories.
Okay, that's it. All right, get out of my office. Bye.
Okay, Aria. Goodbye.
Later.
Okay, before we wrap it up, any favorite plot points that have come up that you're hoping we actually get a thread on?
Yeah, again, the Garrett and Jenna are always fun. But what I would actually like, I would like more of like Ella and Ashley and parents.
Parenting?
Yeah, or just like potentially like it running interference on them in some way of like trying to figure things out. That's a good complicating factor.
Do you think the parents are going to figure out who A is?
No.
Fair. Okay.
Only until after like
A's revealed.
Revealed and dispatched, like gotten rid of. Will I think they understand who A was?
Mm-hmm. Do you think A will be gotten rid of?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, and I say that knowing because I've heard that there are multiple A's.
Yeah. No, I just wanted. I was just curious on your, get rid of. What does that mean?
Yeah, I don't know, but I'm assuming that each A will potentially die or get arrested. So that's my theory. And then
Noel Kahn's just gone from the list though.
I forgot to include men we know very little about. Noel, yes, he's still on the list.
Our little chaos goblin.
Yeah. Again, I think he might just be like last episode where I said that he is just like
he's just drama.
Yes, trying to like get back at them for perceived flight. I think.
Why doesn't he just turn Ezra in? Yeah.
Why doesn't he? Because he's taken from the Mike school of doing weird stuff.
Oh yeah, I forgot they had that scene together too.
Yeah, exactly.
Noel's not the mentor you want.
Not at all. Other plot points from this episode. The weird. I would like to see Toby and Mr. Hastings face off a little bit more.
A little rumble.
Man, I would love more like shit about like property stuff, but that's not like this show's aim. It's a lot more like personal. We're not gonna like abstract it enough to like try and make this also about like the town or rich influence or political power. We may get that tacked on after, but yeah, I think that those are kind of like my big ones because I'm trying to think of ones that like I don't think that may not get followed up on.
That may peter out.
Exactly. I would like those followed up on.
Why Spencer only ever has one parent at a time.
Exactly. That is a bigger mystery that no one will ever be able to figure out.
Cool.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts? How are you feeling about Hannah now that they've kind of dethroned your queen?
Yeah, I still like Hannah as a character. I think these episodes are a real bummer. I don't think it's quite character assassination, but they just put her in like bad plot lines. It's real annoying. I hate having to see her be like opposite to like Caleb's like, stop nagging me, woman.
Mm-hmm. Who got the better plot points in this one?
Spencer had good. Spencer just being like gloves off there, and her connection with like her father finding her Toby finding the stick in the yard.
Mm-hmm.
I think benefited a lot this episode, and Arias. This is classic love triangle shit, but like abstracted through this show, so it's like I shouldn't be rooting for either of these people.
A love triangle that's not appropriate, but also like you're like, well, if I have to pick one,
right? And then, but then there's the other one. The one finds out about their like secret too, so that's good stuff.
Yeah.
And then her family drama is actually entertaining for once because we get Mike.
Mm-hmm.
What more can I say?
You love Mike?
I like what Mike does. I don't know if I like him.
I like what Mike does. B&E.
Yes, it's really funny.
It's so odd.
It really is. And it's such a crime that it's like, oh, like I don't care about that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just so funny. It's like,
oh no,
why would I
taking things from rich people.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's like this. Yeah, exactly. It's. I mean, it's like more intense than what Caleb's doing, but it's like at the same time, it's like I don't care.
Well, everyone can tune in next week to find out if Mike is still breaking and entering
and shoving his sister. Oh my god, I'll never forget that. Incredible.
Every time I watch that episode, I forget who that was, and I'm
so
like,
good.
Who is that? Like, is it Ian? Maybe it's Ian. And then I'm like, oh god, no, it's Mike.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
Mike.
You have to remember that Mike exists.
Yes. Yeah. Mike kind of comes and goes.
Uh-huh.
I assume he got Teen Wolf at some point after this.
Oh, that's really funny.
So Mike got busy.
I mean, he's already like barely around.
All right. Well then, shall we plug?
Let's do it.
When I'm not here doing this, sometimes I help people figure out what they want to do with their lives. You can find all of my career coaching details on butreallythough.com. It'll be linked in my link tree, which will be linked in the episode description or the summary or whatever you're looking at. It'll be in there. Brenton will put it there. There's also links to my TikTok. I like to post content over there. Sometimes it's career related. Sometimes you just get what you get. Sometimes I post Brenton's theories too. So if you want to like laugh at Brenton with me, we can do that over there. He doesn't have TikTok. It's a lot of fun.
No.
And he's never gonna know. Just like, don't be too mean.
Please. I'm sensitive.
You won't know.
Oh yeah,
but it would hurt my feelings because I love you.
Thank you. You're sensitive for me.
You are welcome.
Yes, all our link trees are in all the episode descriptions and on our page. If you want to listen to the audio version of this podcast, it is on any of your podcast platforms of choice. And if you want to listen to the video version, it is on YouTube at Dead Ends. You can also write into us with your thoughts, theories, whatever, as long as there's no spoilers ahead, to deadendspcast@gmail.com. deadendspcast@gmail.com. That's also linked on our pages and in episode description. And then we also do Let's Plays on my YouTube channel at Burger Discourse. And someday I'll get back to writing blogs at burgerdiscourse.com.
But
Might
they're
as well
all
look at the old ones.
Linked in your link tree, right?
Yes.
Cool. People can find them.
That's right. You can find me. And my things.
Digitally, please.
Exactly. Only my digital portfolio. Okay. Anything else?
Nope. I think that's it.
We're still here. We're gonna find out everything.
What do you know from this one?
That Mike has a serious problem.
Breaking and entering.
Don't jailbreak your phone, kids.